Hello and welcome to the 9th Scouching Report for the 2022 NHL Entry Draft. So over the last couple of reports, I've profiled players that I think could or should go in the first round of the NHL Draft. And some of the time I do like to make videos about players that in my view are still really flying under the radar relative to where I view their talent level, or just a player that I've just really loved watching. And I think both of these checkboxes can be checked by Adam Sykora. Now Sykora is not the last prospect that I'll be profiling on his team, HK Nitra, in the Slovakian Extra League. Sykora is a glitter player that I first watched play while tracking Simo Nemec early in the year, and I became a really big fan really quickly for a multitude of reasons. The more I watched of Sykora, especially as the year went on, the more interested I got. And before we get into the real meat of the report, I do also want to mention that it is important to keep in mind that Adam Sykora is 8 days away from being eligible for the 2023 NHL Entry Draft. In many cases, age might not be the most important factor to look at in a player, but I do find that these players born in August to September of their draft-eligible seasons do carry a little bit more intrigue based on how they perform, considering that some of the players eligible and drafted are going to be almost a year ahead of this player. He's also played pretty much the entire season playing against professional competition in Slovakia, and has had some pretty good international performances as well, so let's start digging into this player. So when you look at the data for Adam Sykora, there isn't anything that really blows your mind. There's moderate rates of dangerous shot attempts, moderate pass volumes and completion percentages, and his transition efficiency is what I would categorize as fine but nothing incredible. However, he is currently top 15 in total zone transitions and total offensive zone transitions where he's involved amongst all forwards I've tracked. And when you look at just carrying the puck up the ice in the offensive direction, Sykora managed to carry the puck across blue lines with control a remarkable 87% of the time. So this is a player that in my view has a really interesting potential when it comes to transporting pucks up the ice, who is involved in play often and drove good efficiency metrics getting the puck up the ice, and I think the video will back this up later on in the video. But really, to appreciate what Adam Sykora brings to the game, you kind of have to watch him play, and relative to the rest of the draft class this year, honestly, I'm not sure there's that much better of a raw defensive forward available than Adam Sykora. It is kind of tough to prove this through data because one of the things my data still kind of struggles with is defensive turnover generation and just overall intensity rate, but these are things with Sykora that I certainly think he has in spades. Sykora just constantly and without hesitation chases down players with the puck and constantly applies pressure, driving them into making decisions before they're ready to make them. And what else was really impressive was that there was a lot of situations where I felt that his team was really hemmed in their own zone on defensive cycles, not a whole lot of foot speed to close out those cycles, but then here comes Adam Sykora when the puck's anywhere near him and he's really closing out those cycles. I do track cycle breaks in my data, and Sykora did perform well in this metric, but it really didn't to me encapsulate just how effective Sykora was without the puck on his stick. Upon gaining possession, I found that he scanned the ice quickly, looked for options, and executed on the decision that he made very quickly, and usually got the puck out of his defensive end at least with control. It's just a relatively simple profile already, where this is a player where you're just not going to have to worry off puck when Sykora is on the ice. I found numerous situations where he was chasing down 2-on-1s and really breaking up plays defensively in ways that I think a lot of coaches are going to really latch onto with him. This also carries itself into the offensive zone, able to beat out icing calls, challenge defenders deep below the goal line to try to gain possession in the offensive zone, and just imposing his will on his opponents to gain possession in really dangerous space around the ice. And when it comes to play in the offensive zone, Adam Sykora is not really just defense only. I saw some flashes of some really impressive skill to get pucks into open lanes and create space for himself, really strong senses of body positioning and using his edges and turns to evade pressure and just try to create space for himself that way as well. But the bread and butter to me is that there's just constant examples of Adam Sykora playing defense-first hockey in ways that I find really projectable to the NHL. And I say this a lot with defensive players, but I really look for players that can not only create turnovers, but then do something with the puck afterwards, and Sykora's skill level does allow him to create and execute on new pass lanes and get pucks moving up the ice in really projectable ways. Even if it's not the fanciest thing, it's simple and effective. Sykora is also one of these people that through the screen watching him, it's almost inevitable to think that he's just a great team player. He He's a really selfless player, especially locked in along the boards, scanning and looking for players in rushing lanes of the middle of the ice, and not hesitating to chip pucks over defensive pressure and try to get guys into the offensive zone with possession of the puck. But as I mentioned before, Sykora's not all about defense, and now we're going to look at how there might be a little bit more offensive potential with his game than I think some people might be leading on. And one thing I saw with Sykora that I do think projects pretty well to the ice is being able to scan and be aware of what's going on around the ice, getting pucks up the ice with control and possession, but he can slow the game down a little bit when he is in those offensive rush positions, stopping up, making a read, making a scan, and making a passing play that could lead to offense down the road. It's not all about speed, skill, attacking the net, all these things that people love to watch, but having this ability to push and pull a little bit, I think bodes well for Sykora's future, especially considering he may lack true, real high-end foot speed. But above everything, Sykora is just a workhorse, even in the offensive zone with possession of the puck, as he does bring that mobility and evasion to escape pressure along the boards in the offensive zone and extend possession along the boards. I found that his agility and speed getting his first few steps going was pretty impressive, but he does lack a real high-end gear of speed. But in order to make up for that, he does adapt to pressure really well, using his hands to create space and use that space to find passing lanes or escape pressure with his feet. And I think that his skill level will do a lot to make up for a lack of this foot speed. He could be the last guy into the offensive zone if need be and just float to the front of the net and grind one out in front of the net that way. But this is a player that brings a relatively diverse skill set that I think makes up for the shortcomings when it comes to generating real speed beyond his first couple of steps here and there. On the note about crowding the front of the net and grinding one out, I do look at Sykora and how he shoots the puck and where he's shooting the puck from around the ice, and I do think that there are some situations where he could be a good goal scorer in the National Hockey League, but this is not a player I think you're drafting to shoot the lights out every single night. But what he does have is a strong nose for the net, keeping things simple, getting rebound chances and follow-up chances after that, and really not going down without a fight, which I think a lot of NHL teams might latch themselves onto. But again, there are these flashes of what I think are something more, especially if his agility and skill level at high pace can improve. Being able to change lanes and deceive defenders, cut inside and outside from the boards. The agility may not be really high end, but considering his youth and the fact that he's already playing pro competition, I think there's a lot of room for development for Sykora to build on the defensive side, but also really leverage that into being a better offensive player. And when he does dig into the ice and have a lot of those real quick turns to create space for himself, once in a while I saw that come out in the offensive zone as well. The sample may have been a little bit limited, but at the end of the day, I think it's still something you could leverage and nurture and try to get him to do a little bit more often to be able to create a little bit more offense in the offensive zone. But with the defensive intensity he shows, the smart decision making in transition, the flashes of really strong playmaking instincts, the no-nonsense offensive approach to the game, and a really strong sense of defensive awareness, there's a really interesting player here in Adam Sykora, and I'm really curious to see where he ends up. So the best part of Adam Sykora's game to me is his defensive engagement. This one was pretty straightforward for me. And I do honestly believe that Adam Sykora might be one of the better raw defensive forwards available in this year's draft, and I do think that that can be leveraged into better offensive results. And yes, he's playing against a lower level professional league in Slovakia that's largely unproven when it comes to projecting to the NHL, but these are still veteran men that have been training for years and playing this sport for a really long time, and he held his own and in my view got better over the course of the year, leading through smart defense in ways that I find are actually projectable to good results in the National Hockey League. And he plays a way in which I would describe it as actual defense. And what I mean by that isn't just creating turnovers and charging into guys along the boards and making them wish they never laced up the skates for the first time ever, but I do want to see out of defensive players an ability to turn the play and get up the ice with efficiency. Sykora is able to take the puck back and get the puck moving in the right direction, which to me, in a certain way, is good defensive hockey. There's stick work, body positioning, a constant work rate coming from his feet that all goes into a really interesting soup that I think NHL teams should be pretty interested in. He can pressure opponents when they're trying to break the puck out of their defensive end and force decision making, and there he is and the puck is on his stick. And while covering defensive rushes was a little bit of a mixed bag for me with Sykora, I did find a lot of at least capability when it comes to positional defense, especially when his feet weren't moving. So there's just a really well-rounded defensive defensive game with Sykora that I think any NHL team would be happy to work with. The good part is just the offensive potential of his game. And as he is right now, I don't think he shows real massive potential for being a real scoring threat from anywhere in the offensive zone. But as a supplementary, hard-working, offensive possession forward, I think he could generate production here and there through sneaky little slip passes, making plays off the boards, getting to the net, tipping shots in, getting rebounds on net, and just doing those little things that coaches are looking for that can lead to productive goal scoring. He does have foot speed limitations, so body positioning and quick thinking are going to be imperative to help him translate offensively. But if you can find a way to park him in front of the net, build on his strength a little bit, make it harder for him to be moved out of that crease area, you could definitely see, and I did see some situations of little tiny passing plays in the high danger areas to hit open targets and get easy goals into the back of the net. This is a really simple but effective method of generating offense, and I did see it from time to time out of Sykora. He's a guy who I think just makes his line mates' lives easier. The not so good part to me are the limitations that the natural pace of his game might bring. Now, I don't think there are too many real major downsides to Sykora's game, but I do think it limits his potential upside because you are hoping for some pretty significant improvements to project to the NHL level, and I think it might cause him to settle as a maybe not super productive, but somewhat effective third or fourth liner in the NHL. While he could quickly pick up pucks with efficiency and effectiveness and find those breakout options, he's going to still need to find ways to do it quicker, execute on those options quicker, and just get pucks going quicker up the ice. So while he does make up for his lack of pace in his game through strong thinking and pretty good skill to find space and create lanes, I do think that the general ability to generate speed, use pace and skill and agility at those high speeds are all going to need to come a little bit of a ways in order to really maximize what you can get out of them. So to me, Adam Sykora has just been a fascinating watch all season, who I didn't even have on my radar coming into this year. Could he be a really high-end 200-foot winger that drives really good possession analytics? I could see that with the right development curve, and he figures it out at his best. I could see it. But I think what's more likely is that he just becomes a really rock-solid and dependable defensive forward. Even though he lacks some size, I do think he could be at least a specialist when it comes to shutting down defensive cycles, getting pucks going in the offensive direction, grinding play out all over the ice, and chipping in with little offensive plays here and there. In order to find really high-end success in the NHL, though, I do think pace is going to need to improve for Sykora and just hitting a higher gear at top speed, because I did find that when he was trying to quarterback rushes himself, he could get closed out by opponents, and this is something that certainly will occur in the NHL. But with his skill level and ability to create lanes, I think it's pretty easy to see Adam Sykora as at least some kind of NHL player at the end of the day. He makes good reads of the ice, he works with his line mates really well, he obviously works hard all over the ice, and you have to respect that, and I think building on his quickness and skill level could unlock new avenues of potential for him. Anticipating pressure and evading it in advance, even though his skill level isn't necessarily a 1A level player, is really interesting and projectable to me, especially considering this is a player almost eligible for the next season's draft in 2023. But to me, Adam Sykora just carries a lot of value because I think he is exactly what NHL teams are looking for, especially playing the kind of hockey that gets played around this time of the season in the NHL playoffs. He's never satisfied with the opponent having the puck. He's always back-checking. He's always helping out his line mates and always doing the dirty work that some other guys may not be as willing to do as much. And he did show the ability to at least get the puck moving towards the opponent's net more often than not, rather than making poor decisions and dumping pucks to opponents for just another defensive rush for him to participate in. Simple plays can add up, and Sykora does have a really good ability to keep things simple while also being effective. And as his skill level and quickness could improve, that rate of hard work that he puts in all of the time, especially in the offensive zone, could lead to sneaky production that improves over time as he gets stronger and quicker. In my view, the quick thinking he has may help overcome some of the issues with the pace of his game in terms of playing in the NHL, and that may limit his offensive upside at the end of the day, but I do still think that at the end of all this, we're looking at some kind of NHL player, and if you get that outside the first round, you've done pretty well for an NHL draft pick. But there is room for improvement with regards to offensive transition evasion with the skill and thinking that he brings that could leverage itself into better offense down the line. But this is just a really well-rounded player that I have really enjoyed watching over the course of this year because he goes out there and earns everything he gets through pure hard work and smarts. There's room to grow. He's nearly a year behind some of the other players in this year's draft cohort, and he shows a potential for improvement if certain areas of his game improve around his current talent profile. And guys like this, especially at this age, and more especially playing against professional hockey players overseas, in my view, are pretty rare. And I always latch onto them because I find them just really enjoyable. And I think players like Sykora are players that NHL teams benefit greatly from having on their NHL roster, whether it's in the regular season or in the playoffs. And I get the feeling, based on where I've seen him ranked, that outside the first round, he could be a great value pickup this July. The birthday, the current profile, the potential upside. There's just a lot to like with Adam Sykora. And so while a lot of eyes on his team were focused on Simon Nemec, do not forget about the other guy wearing number 10 that plays on that team, because I get the feeling that he might be flying under the radar a little bit too much. So that's it for this Scouching Report. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, you can click all the buttons you see below me so you never miss another one. If you really liked it, you could subscribe on Patreon or here on YouTube by clicking the YouTube membership join button below. You'll get access to exclusive player cards, data visualizations for all my tracked players, data sheets for hundreds of drafted and undrafted prospects around the world, and plenty of other goodies you can check out. Or you can buy some merch at the Scouching shop, where 50% of profits go to the Women's Sports Foundation. So that's all, and we will see you in the next one.